All right, ready?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to.
Brase Makes with James Connors.
So Andrew, we're back. The last time we got together, we made these cardboard models, these 2D, 3D cardboard models, and so what are we doing this week?
So the purpose of the last models was to sort of verify your scale. So you modeled this up in 3D, but it spent most of its life on the screen,
Right.
As some ones and zeros, and so you wanted to see, does this look like it does in my head? So we took our design, we printed it out, and did sort of a mix of side view, front view, and then this is sort of a combination that gives us a really rough volume, so you have something you can kind of like hold in your hand.
Yeah.
Which was great, and it told us a lot, and you were pleased with that size.
I was pleased.
So on this one, I think what we're going to do is just to fill out some of this volume a little bit more. We'll kind of get a head start with some found materials.
Oh, yeah.
So
what did we find?
we found lots of bottles. We found some yogurt containers.
Oh, yeah.
Here, can we get another bottle in here? I think what would be really cool to see is some clear, like a clear canopy,
Yeah.
which we should be able to achieve with the bottles. And with our little sticks and T-pins, we should be able to actually get some spinning motion with the propellers.
That's going to be awesome. Because I have never seen this propeller spin in real life.
Right.
I've seen it spin in the digital world. Shout out Derek Elliott. But never in real life.
Only simulation.
Yeah.
This is going to be a real thing that's going to fly, maybe. I think we like the top.
Yeah.
This part, I don't know how useful the spout will be. I think what I'll do is I'll cut this off,
Yeah.
and we can cap it. And actually with your design, it's got kind of
It's got a separation.
well, the original design's supposed to be wood, right? So
Yes.
you have sort of this like slat that goes through it,
Yeah.
which we could represent. We could build this out and have and cut this into two halves,
Right.
if we wanted to.
Yeah.
If we wanted to do it completely clear, we could just focus on this like back section.
Right. And then just
And just
glue
stick it
onto
on, and
yeah.
then this like hemisphere, this whole section kind of just plops down on the rest
Right.
of our body.
Right.
So what I found with this, while I'm cutting through it, is it was like even moving down like a few millimeters from here to here,
Yeah.
it was like significantly thinner down here. So just if you ever happen to be cutting the top off of a bottle, give yourself some room.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about like how, like, 'cause this is spinning, allowing it to spin, but I need the legs to stay in place. Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe I could take the legs and glue those to the top of this, and then have something on the bottom, another cardboard piece that I would connect that to, so that this can spin freely.
So that's spinning, and then you have like a cage around it?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. That might be the jam right there. What are you doing over there, Andrew?
I'm trying to figure out how I want to break this up. What my next steps are.
Yeah. Let's see if I can get any guides on here for my cutting.
So one thing that's nice about working with plastic bottles is it's thin enough you can just cut with scissors, which can be a lot easier,
Right. All right.
as flimsy as it is. So I'm kind of actually going off of the original model you built in CAD and how it broke up. So you have sort of this, the main body and the tail are the same central piece.
Yeah.
You have these two hemispheres that kind of come in from the outside. Down here you've got the, what do we call it, PCFs?
PCFs.
The propeller containing feet.
Yeah.
So you have the PCFs there, and then the propellers are, this basically from here on down it kind of starts to curve
Yeah.
down. So my sort of like light version of that, I think we'll keep this top center body, keep the hemisphere thing going. And then this, basically from there on down, it'll just be a set of discs that just kind of reduce in size. I'm actually going to use this bottle to dictate the rest of the proportions.
Andrew, I'm currently cutting out a circle, and I think the method that you would probably advise is the one that we were doing in the last video, where you're kind of cutting tangentially to the edge. Is that what you would do?
Yeah, I would start with big flats. So you start with a square, and then you turn that into like an octagon.
Okay.
And then you turn that into whatever's next. I don't know what happens after octagon. You kind of just keep kind of nipping away at it until you get something that looks like a circle. And if you're using something like a Sharpie and you have kind of a fat line, you can hide some of the little straights within that so it looks round.
Right.
Even if it's not perfectly round. I'm not ready to commit to gluing this totally, so I'm just kind of tacking it in the corners. And this is just to give me, like, start to figure out how this
looking cool.
Starts to look. I'm deciding right now, I want to know if I want to, do I need to make this centerpiece thicker? Like, do I need to add another layer of cardboard?
Right.
To kind of make it beefier. And it looks, in the drawing, I feel like it needs to be, I think it needs another layer, so I'll do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself with this.
So I'll use the first one I did as a template for the second one. So I made this piece, and then I used this piece to trace out my second piece.
Right.
When you trace this, it's going to be bigger than this.
Right.
Because you're going to be tracing the outer edge.
Right.
And so whereas on this one, when I first sketched this up, I was cutting kind of on the outside of my line.
Yeah.
Whenever I trace this, I'm actually then kind of cutting on the inside of that edge.
That makes sense.
For it to be the same offset.
If you are using a part more than once, you're creating the same shape more than once. If you use the subsequent ones that you cut out, it's like a game of telephone where it's just like
it gets further and further away from the original truth.
Yeah, so like you want to, as much as you can, use that original shape as your template for all of the others. So do you have any ideas about how to start to size this? Do I just grab a piece of paper and figure out, like, what does that look like? What is the length of whatever I need to do?
Yeah, I did just like a rough doodle here.
Yeah.
And I think what you could do is, I would say this is what I would do. I would say make it longer than you think you need. So, like, I don't know, based on this scale, they're probably not going to stick out more than maybe, what, 4 or 5 inches?
Yeah.
So, cut a strip that's like maybe a foot. And then from the center, start to add score marks outward.
Okay.
And then you can kind of see how many scores you need to get the curve that you want to get the spacing between the two and keep them parallel because they are here. And then you can decide, okay, I need to shorten, I need to trim off the excess on the ends.
Right. Very smart. So right now I'm using this and referencing the proportion of this, and it turns out to be pretty much the same width as these. So with the model that I have right now, I'm just using that same measurement to
so
create
you're using that depth to dictate how wide
the
they
PCFs
are. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the same way, if you're going kind of like quick and loose, like I haven't measured anything. I started again using the top of the bottle as like what sets the scale for the rest of the part.
Yeah.
And then I was just visually saying, like, even with a stick or a pen, just being like, okay, the diameter is this, the tail is maybe 2/3 of that.
Right.
And then using that to even sketch out like how far, and if this is too far, I can always like tweak it. But
Right.
But yeah, I think that getting used to those kind of proportional measurements are
Yeah.
probably potentially even more critical than trying to get into like the millimeters and
Yeah.
tenths of an inch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now that I have this kind of basic shape with the hemisphere here, I'm going to use this to trace the base. The way that I've done these bottle halves, it's imperfect, right?
Yeah.
Which is okay. And I'm using that to trace this, but then as I'm looking at the circle that's left, it's not really a circle, it's a weird like egg. So out of this cardboard, I want to make this nicer because it's all lumpy. I've cut this little strip here,
Yeah.
and I've taken the diameter, so the overall diameter I want to go for, and halved it. So we're taking the radius of that, so half of that. And I really just took kind of the midpoint of this as like I want to go from the center to the outside, and that's where these 2 points came from. I'm going to put a pin. I'm going to try to center this so I don't run off the edge, but I'm going to put a pin in what I think is the middle. And then I've made a little hole over here. And then we can, let's see if this goes through. This marker's running out of ink, but I'm basically using this as a compass. So just something that you can make with just the bits that you've got laying around.
Let me get mine.
Okay, so there's a slight difference between the quality of these two circles. This is kind of egg-shaped, and then this is not. And what's nice is also this bottle it's kind of flexible, so you can fudge it a bit. So, you know, as I tack this down, I can sort of push these sides in a bit to be a little closer to the circle.
So I'm using another technique that I got from Andrew last time, which is making these. What would you? I'm kind of scoring, slatting,
Slashing, slatting, slashing.
Slashing is what it's called. All right.
All right, so where are we? So you're copying your copying your first template because you figured it out, right?
I figured it out, and so yeah. So this is the first PCF, and so I have two more that I've laid out here that I'm going to cut out, score, and then start gluing up, I think.
Okay. And then I've got the top in a pretty decent spot, and right now I'm trying to build up the layers. I think my approach for building up the the PCF, the top and bottom PCF bases, and then the actual spinning bit is just going to stack a bunch of rings that sort of reduce in size to kind of build up that sort of like a cone shape. So it's just cutting out more circles.
Yeah.
So, to speed up building up my form, instead of trying to build up a bunch of different layers. So this is going to be for the section that I'm going to have the propellers come out, and so it's not exactly as drawn, but I'm basically made a little triangle that's going to split everything into 3 sections, so the propellers can kind of, or the blades can stick out there, and this also gives me some depth. And because I already have holes in the centers because of the little compass tool that I made, I'm actually going to use those to help register them, because then later I can pin it, and I can A, line them up when I'm gluing them, and B, actually hopefully get this thing to spin.
Ooh, look at that.
So.
Oh, so clean. I feel like also the swiftness with what you're cutting also helps you know, because otherwise the cardboard can kind of mush up if you're too slow. I feel like
You can't you can't give the cardboard time to react.
No. One nice thing about model making is that it gives you time to kind of meditate, or reflect on what it is that you've done. Because if you just hit print and get it 3D printed and look at it the next day, you might not have the same level of reflection that you do when you're actually making the thing. What is this pin?
A T-pin.
A T-pin? I mean, makes a lot of sense. Because you can make tea with it.
So I had my first PCF that I think I've got about the right length. I wanted to make them a little bit wider, so I've done that.
Yeah.
But I want to make multiples, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm actually, because I know I'm going to score all of these,
Yeah.
I'm actually going to try to make them in a batch like this. So I've got 3 of them here.
Yeah.
And before I cut them out, I'm going to score all the lengths at the same time so that they all line up.
How precise do you find you're able to eyeball things?
Well, you know, a lot of it with the eyeballing stuff, it's sort of, it's all proportional, right? It's sort
Right.
of like if it looks right, it usually looks right for a reason.
Right.
Even if you can't totally put your finger on it.
Right.
You know, in our case, you know, once you've defined the dome, and it kind of feeds into everything else.
Right.
And so everything else is in kind of relation to the dome, and I am eyeballing it, and I'm kind of using tools to measure. They're just not measuring in a particular unit.
Right.
It's like it's not inches, it's not millimeters. It's
It's-
you know, it's like a third of a Sharpie marker, or like a quarter of a Sharpie marker. You
Right.
know?
I mean, I don't know, Andrew, if you advise people to just kind of jump in because, you know, and just okay, that's your first attempt.
I definitely really try to, as early as possible, try to push that nothing is precious.
Yeah.
Because when you start to, when it becomes your baby, then you're not looking at it objectively, and
Right.
it's like you start to hesitate when you should be spending that time exploring and confirming or denying your thoughts, right?
Right. Okay.
What's that mean?
I've got some propellers. I've got propellers in place.
That's great. Okay, so I've got these blades, and right now they just stick straight out. I want them to bend along with that curve. When it's thinner, you know, and you cut it, you score it, and it kind of bends in the other direction. So the score you're making kind of opens up, and that allows for your curve. I'm kind of wanting it to bend right along the center, and I've laminated 2 pieces together. So I've scored the top, and the bottom I've cut sort of a notch of material out so that there's room
Yeah.
to kind of bring it in.
Nice. Andrew, how would you go about matching this curve up to this? Is it just cutting and...
Let's try to get it in the same kind of direction here.
Yeah.
How far in? Is it going to end?
It's going to end there, yeah.
Here, I'll do it. So I'm going to hold it here and then try to keep it perpendicular.
Oh, yeah. All right.
And see where that gets you. And
That looks pretty good to me. There we go. Look at that. Just changes everything. All right. So, woo, buddy. Oh my gosh, are you finished?
No. Never finished.
Don't lie to me, Andrew.
Okay, let's clean up a little bit. And then do a
and we
little
can assess
the
our models.
situations.
And Andrew, I would like you to grade my model as you would grade any model, since you are a professor.
on a curve. Okay, what have we learned?
That I need to plan this better next time.
Okay, so what would you do differently?
So, okay, so what I would do differently if I were to address this again, I think I would focus more on getting all the thicknesses. So doubling these up, just so it has a little bit more visual weight. But I think actually, like, proportionally, it's not too far off. I mean, maybe this dome probably
It's like
rides up a little higher.
Which you probably could have solved by just cutting down a little,
Yeah.
or trimming up a little bit.
Yeah. But I think the other thing is, like, I would say that this whole area is kind of a big mystery right now, and so starting to get into those details, and I feel like you got into them much more than I did, because I just kind of attached it to this piece, and just kind of by chance got this this fit here between this cup and the top of the soda bottle to where I could get it to spin, which is kind of an interesting, like, I would never have considered that.
I was going to say, this kind of like this being potentially a bearing surface where you don't have an axle going through so much as just these like two lips that kind of fit just right. I think that, that could be the solution.
Yeah.
Do you, what do you think the benefits of this over this are for you as the designer?
Right. I think a lot of it has to do with the interactions, and also in terms of, like, you are starting to get into the assembly process of it, so understanding how things get assembled. What did you learn about the design and the process?
Yeah, I think a lot of this, what's going on here is, what would I do differently? At least in my model, I do have a pin that sort of like holds all these like concentric pieces together.
Yeah.
But really, what controls the spacing between the bottom foot and the top foot, not the foot, but I mean the base here and this base, is this curve, and this actually bears the weight of that.
Right.
Which I think is a problem. Well, especially when these are, flexible.
Yeah.
But just like from like an engineering standpoint, I feel that makes me nervous of like having, if this is all one piece, like one sandwich.
Oh yeah.
And then having all the weight and all the force kind of like going around this bend.
Yeah.
Times 3.
You could almost think of this top piece as being cast with an area here, a connector area here, and then this area also having like sort of an area to receive something that would just be this. Yeah, I could sketch that out. So if it were, if you imagine these propeller feet as being, kind of their own independent pieces, and then they have, some area there, and then you have these that form out so that there's an area to come into and connect in some way. That was one of the big things, was trying to figure out, like, how would you produce this in real life, because you can't really make this all in one piece. But it's good now that we've done this to know that that's something that we need to
Right, that's something
out.
that doesn't really get communicated or brought up with these models, and just through the action of trying to fabricate it with these materials, you learn a lot about, like, oh, this is how does this? What is?
How do you feel proportionally, or just in terms of like the size between, because
the scale has changed, right?
Yeah, the scale has changed, and I am kind of liking this scale. It feels a bit more substantial, and it feels like maybe it's the right size, especially for the age range that this toy would probably be marketed toward. It's like chunky enough that it's like nice to hold on to, and zoom. Yeah, and that's another thing, is like considering the aspect of play, and how would you hold this as soon as you start to realize you've got these spinning propellers. Like, how do you hold on to it? And you can't really hold it. Like, you can kind of hold it up here, but why would you want to? Like,
Right.
especially during
Palming it,
pretend play, you would be like, well, I don't want to block the pilot's vision.
Right. So there's some ergonomic studies that need to happen with this. How do you feel about the time investment? And when do you think it would be appropriate to take the model to this level? Like, do you think it's smart to jump from here to here or here to there? Or is there something in between you feel like, or would you just like focus on just the mechanism or something like that?
I mean, I feel like, so I would say that model probably took what? Like,
This thing took us an hour, but like
But
if you were focused, it would take
really,
like 10, 15 minutes.
yeah. And I feel like this one took us around
It's like probably 2 or 3 hours.
2 hours, but you know,
Like
again,
focused,
with focus, maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Which doesn't feel like a waste of time to me, because I feel like, you know, as we were kind of talking about, while you're making your model, you're also in the process of sketching with that model, so you're figuring things out about your design that you won't if you're just stuck in you know, the world of sketching, which I think can happen all too often. I mean, I know for myself, like, I spent more time sketching than I probably needed to a lot of times in school, where I could have spent an hour and a half making a model that would have unlocked,
Would have answered a lot of questions.
it would have answered a lot of questions. And the other thing is, like, we're always thinking and competing with something like 3D printing, and I feel like you're not going to be able to make this in an hour and a half.
No, you
between
could
CAD
maybe
and 3D printing.
I mean, even if we're just talking about printing, if you already have the CAD file, which you do for this,
Yeah.
like even something to scale, like this is going to take 4 or 5 hours or something, right?
Right. So to me, the time seems worth it. Cool. Well, yeah, I think this has been an incredibly worthwhile exercise, especially as the second exercise in the series. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here and what we learn along the way.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Fun.
Yeah. Well, I guess this has been another edition of... And next time we'll be doing another cardboard model, a little bit higher fidelity. Any parting words, Andrew?
No.